Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
In the summer of 1995 saw the third Batman film hit the big screen. The new film went with a different direction and with a new actor playing the role of Batman. Produced on a large budget of $100 million and made nearly $350 million worldwide. After the lukewarm reception of Batman Returns, Warner Brothers wanted to tone down the darker elements for the sequel and make it more family friendly. Many parents had complained about the unnecessary violence Batman Returns had and a sort of downbeat feel to the movie. It certainly didn't feel like a summer blockbuster that many were hoping for. The strange thing is that the first Batman film wasn't really aimed at children, and it did extremely well, so I don't think the dark style of Batman Returns was the problem. It just had a very weak story and relied too heavily on its visuals. It seemed all style over substance, like many recent Tim Burton films. Now, with Michael Keaton deciding not to play Batman anymore, Joel Schumacher went with Val Kilmer, after being impressed with him in Tombstone. Val Kilmer, I think, does an okay job. He does look very good in the Batman suit, and in some scenes looks very similar to Michael Keaton. But you kind of feel Val isn't that devoted to playing the role. Personally, I thought Michael Keaton looked great in the suit and had the best voice for Batman, but his Bruce Wayne was very weak. He didn't act like the Bruce Wayne I knew from the comics. Val Kilmer does a better job with the role, but is by no means perfect. You don't come away after watching the film thinking that he is Batman, and doesn't leave you with a strong lasting impression. I did feel the bat suit for the first half of the movie is really well done, and the bat cowl looks great on Val Kilmer. The new suit at the end does serve a purpose for the story, but does lean more towards an aiming to make toys to accompany the movie with its design, and as a kid I wasn't too keen on it, and wished he stayed in the original costume. The casting of Chris O'Donnell I felt was a good move. I don't think anyone had any problems with him playing Robin at the time. I did feel maybe he was already too old to be Robin, but the story does imply that he is older than the Robin that was introduced in the comics. The suit he wore at the end does its job and looks very familiar to the original design, and does have some resemblance to the Nightwing costume Dick Grayson wears later on in the comics. But the colours are a bit too muted, and when doing the end battle, the scenes are generally lit quite dark, or there are large amounts of green which can make it difficult to see him in action, or what the suit really looks like the majority of the time. I always laughed when they threw in a line in reference to the old 60s TV show.
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
Huh?
The ground, it's all metal, it's full of holes, you know? Holy!
Oh.
Nicole Kidman plays Dr. Chase Meridian, and is extremely forgettable in this film, and her character is just there to create a relationship for Batman. She's a good actress, and she's let down by bland and generic dialogue. She is there to investigate and assist with tracking down Two-Face, but she never does her job. She spends half her time chasing after Batman. The first scene you see her in, she acts like a guy with a raging boner. She practically wants Batman's baby straight away. It's ridiculous. Isn't this supposed to be a family film? Now with the villains, Jim Carrey at the time was on his way to becoming a huge star. After hits like The Mask and Ace Ventura, he adds his comedic style to the Riddler, and it works in some areas, but it does affect the characterization of the Riddler and how he relates to the comics. Jim Carrey is obviously given a lot of free rein to ad-lib or how to approach certain scenes, and I think that is the problem. He does his usual style of comedy and it looks all too familiar. I think if Jim Carrey played the Riddler now, I think he would do a better job and will probably stay more in character. There is a lot of similarities, however, in his performance to the old 60s show version of the Riddler. Tommy Lee Jones, as many people know, is a fantastic actor, but he is pretty bad in this film. The script does let him down, but to me he doesn't resemble the Two-Face I knew from the comics. and even the cartoon. The one scene which is way out of character is when Two-Face is flipping his coin to decide whether to shoot Bruce Wayne. He keeps flipping it till he gets the right side. Two-Face would never do that. He would flip it once and make his decision upon that result of the coin toss. The story starts in Gotham City, with Batman stopping a hostage situation in a bank caused by Two-Face, the alter ego of the disfigured former district attorney, Harvey Dent. Unfortunately, Two-Face escapes, and Batman narrowly avoids death by jumping from a helicopter as it cuts its way through the Statue of Liberty. The following day, Edward Nygma, a researcher at Wayne Enterprises, develops a new device to beam television directly into a person's brain. Bruce Wayne, with whom Nygma is obsessed with, rejects the invention, noting that it raises too many questions, and Edward angrily resigns from his position after killing his supervisor, who offered him no support throughout his career at Wayne Enterprises. After meeting psychiatrist Dr. Chase Meridian, Bruce invites her to a charity circus event. There, Two-Face and his henchmen storm the event in an attempt to discover Batman's secret identity, and in the process murder the Flying Graysons, a family of acrobats. The youngest member, Dick Grayson, survives and throws Two-Face's bomb into the river. Bruce assumes responsibility for Dick and allows him to stay at Wayne Manor. Dick then declares his intention to kill Two-Face and avenge his family, and when he discovers Bruce's secret identity as Batman, he insists on becoming his sidekick. Meanwhile, Edward Nygma becomes a criminal and calls himself the Riddler, and forms an alliance with Two-Face. Using his invention that Bruce had rejected earlier, the device becomes extremely popular in Gotham, and he uses it to steal the public's intelligence and channels it into his own mind. The score by Elliot Goldenthal has left many divided. Joel Schumacher wanted a new theme for his version of Batman. I remember as a kid being a bit disappointed with the change in the music. We had 2 Batman films and the animated series incorporating Danny Elfman's theme. I was so used to that music and it fit the character of Batman well. Over the years I have got used to Elliot Goldenthal's music. I find it to be very enjoyable, especially listening to it by itself. It works extremely well and stands on its own without having to watch the film. In all honesty though, it doesn't really suit Batman, but the composer is a great artist, and I love his work, especially his score to Alien 3. The movie does also feature many other artists contributing songs to the movie. The most popular tunes released was Seal's A Kiss on a Rose and U2's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me. Both tracks were big in the charts in the UK, and I imagine around the world. It really sustained Batman Forever's popularity during the summer, and fans still like to listen to the album to this day. It's far better than that awful Prince album. Batman-related video games are always popular on home consoles, and most games featuring Batman were pretty good. During the 90s, especially Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo. Batman Forever the video game was developed by Probe Entertainment, who had handled the home console conversions of Mortal Kombat, and you can see from the gameplay it plays very similar to Mortal Kombat, but scrolls along like a platformer. It was heavily criticised for its awful controls, confusing level design, and repetitive gameplay. It was released on the Mega Drive, Super Nintendo and the PC. For some reason the Super Nintendo version had to load between levels, telling you to hold on. It's a cartridge game, they shouldn't have to load. That's the novelty of games on cartridge. It just stinks of poor programming. In the arcades there was also a game released as well. It was produced by Acclaim. It used the Sega Saturn hardware and plays like a typical scrolling beat-em-up, like Streets of Rage. Many complained about the game becoming too hectic on screen and finding it difficult to see what's going on. It was released on the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. If you wanted to play it for yourself, I would recommend the Saturn version, down to the original arcade being based on similar hardware. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert were split on their opinions on the film. Both agreed it was better than Batman Returns, but even though Gene Siskel recommended the film and enjoyed it, he did find it a very forgettable movie.
Batman Forever is a great looking movie and it's entertaining, but somehow this series keeps on missing the boat. Batman is the most fascinating and mysterious of all the comic book superheroes, and he's about more than simply action and special effects and colorful villains. Batman Forever is basically just a very good-looking comic book movie, and I think Batman deserves more and better.
It's funny, I've been having a strange reaction to this picture. I liked it while I was watching it, and as soon as it was over, it didn't mean anything to me. And as the days have gone on, it's meant even less, if that's possible. I'm recommending the picture because I can't deny that while I was watching it, I thought the dialogue was very funny. I thought that Jim Carrey, sometimes he goes over the top, but that's Jim Carrey. And I thought also that Nicole Kidman those scenes were really appealing, and they do talk, they do hint at the fetishistic side, if you will, of Batman. There is a little bit of that going on there. So I'm sort of caught in the middle, but I liked it while I was watching it. It's, the way that they juggle the 5 characters here is pretty impressive because they're all given enough screen time, except maybe Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, one thing that happens is that maybe because Jim Carrey is so hot right now, the Riddler kind of takes over the picture and maybe even has as much screen time or almost as much as Batman himself. I cannot quite recommend this movie, and yet I do think it's better than the previous one, Batman Returns. It's kind of in that middle area, and as you observed, it doesn't really have any resonance.
No.
It's kind of like it's a 2-hour and whatever it is, 3-minute movie.
A lot of good scenes and no substance.
2 hours and 5 minutes after it starts, you're thinking about something else.
Okay.
I think Batman Forever does get a bad rap because it's lumped in with Batman and Robin, which everyone knows turned out to be a total disaster. And people seem to think Batman Forever is overly camp and full of bad one-liners, which is far from it. Yes, it does have campy and cheesy elements, and the visual style in some areas mirrors the 60s TV show, but it also has some really dark moments, and out of all the Batman movies, not including the Christopher Nolan series, it's the only one that expands the character of Bruce Wayne, and has him more featured as a main character, where Tim Burton's Batman films you kind of felt that the villains were more central to the film, and Batman was just in the background a lot of the time. The original cut of the film did have more scenes with Bruce being haunted by his past, and why he became Batman, and if those scenes were left in, it would have given the film a bit more weight to the drama and the emotional structure of the story. These scenes were what the original story's narrative were built up from. The deleted scenes can be viewed on the DVD and Blu-ray. What I really like about this film is the photography and visual design. There are moments that it looks like Blade Runner, and there are elements that you feel you are watching the animated series in a live-action setting. The camera angles and setups are very inventive. The action set pieces are far superior to the previous films. The first 15 minutes are spectacular and really deliver on what audiences wanted at the time from their summer blockbusters. The special effects as well were very impressive. They combine miniatures and state-of-the-art computer graphics, featuring one of the first fully animated characters in a visual effect form, showing Batman diving off a building and flying down in pursuit of Two-Face. Looking at the effects now, they are a bit dated in some areas, generally where they were too ambitious with using CGI. The visual effects supervisor John Dykstra, who is one of my personal favourite effects artists, had said that this was one of the last big films that used extensive miniatures that he worked on. The story for Robin is very true to the comics, and you have to give them credit for being faithful to his backstory. The bad parts, and there are many unfortunately, that make it not the best Batman film. Jim Carrey acts, well, like Jim Carrey. His Riddler has elements of The Mask and Ace Ventura thrown in. There are moments where you generally feel he is in character, but the majority of the time he's just way over the top. Tommy Lee Jones just spends half the time just cackling away laughing, and his backstory is poorly translated to film. They just seem like pale imitations of the Joker. The Riddler also creates his power station pretty quickly, I must say, and it attacks the Batwing with some sort of energy beam. How come he can attack objects with zapping people's intelligence? A lot of things in the film don't make sense, and happen with no real explanation. I wasn't a fan of the new Batmobile. It just looked too cumbersome and looks very impractical. It looked too over the top and lacked the finesse of the original car. H.R. Giger was contacted to provide some designs, but they were never used. As you can see, they look very bizarre. They introduced a new Batboat and the Batwing again, which is nice to see and sets up another action set piece, but they get destroyed within minutes. They were only used for Batman and Robin to get to the next location and just seem wasted. Joel Schumacher does get a lot of criticism for the way Batman and Robin turned out, but you mustn't forget he has directed some really good films, from The Lost Boys, Falling Down, Phone Booth and The Phantom of the Opera. He is more versatile and varied with his output of work in comparison to Tim Burton. Joel does genuinely seem like a fan of Batman, and he has openly admitted he has read the comics and was a big fan of Batman Year One, which at one point was the film he wanted to make. He is clearly having a lot of fun with Batman Forever. With Batman and Robin, it did feel like a toy commercial, but with Batman Forever, it does feel like a proper movie, and it delivers on what audiences at the time wanted from their summer blockbusters. As a kid, I loved the experience I had watching it, but as Gene Siskel had mentioned in his review, it's very forgettable, and it's true, it's all down to the story. You don't feel at all invested in it really. If the deleted scenes they left out were put back in, then maybe it would be a stronger film, but as it stands, it's just a visual tour de force and can be enjoyed for that reason alone. Batman Forever can be enjoyed by all age groups. It's certainly not the worst Batman film, it's obviously a lot better than Batman and Robin, and I feel it's more enjoyable than Batman Returns. It's a solid 3 out of 5 movie, and I think people should give it another go. If you haven't seen it for a long time or was disappointed with Batman and Robin and feel Batman Forever is the same style of film, then I hope after this review you will feel encouraged to watch it again, and you'll notice it's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be, and you can enjoy it for what it is.
Riddle me this. What kind of a man has bats on the brain?
I just saved your life. You owe me.
You are totally out of control. You're gonna get yourself killed.
You're looking at your new partner.
No.
Don't kill him.
You can't understand. Your family wasn't killed by a maniac.
Yes, they were.
You gotta help me.
If you do find Harper, and then you kill him, what next?
The real game begins. Open sesame.